So thank you. Good afternoon, all. My name is Verghese Philippos. It's like a great opportunity to meet you all virtually this time. This is my first time I'm presenting into this great community. I had an opportunity last year, but then due to last minute personal problems, I couldn't come in. So this time I got in, but then, yeah, unfortunately I couldn't. We are not there in Madrid. So hopefully for the next time. So just to give you a brief on myself, who am I? I'm currently working at VMware. My career started with Citrix and Wise Technologies, wherein I work in the pre-sales, post-sales, and then for the next 5+ years, I was a Citrix consultant, and then from there, I had two years in Trend Micro, and since almost close to 8 years, currently I'm working at VMware as a technical account manager. So that's all on me, and just to go into story today. So today, I know this is a completely different topic than the topics which I have seen today with the but then yeah, this is really interesting. vSphere 7, which is one of the I would say one of the major releases or complete redesign of vSphere platform or ESXi platform since we released ESXi quite a years back, right? So I'll be talking about that, try to give you insights into the major features, major enhancements, what is new in there, and how you can leverage all of those things in your environment, right? So that's how the agenda would look like. Please feel free to ask the questions, put in the chat. I'll try to break it in between, have a pause in between, and then look at the questions if there are anything, and or else we can definitely look at the last words, the questions on the chat. Okay, so vSphere 7. So vSphere 7 is a major release, as I've mentioned. This is a major redesign of our ESXi platform since the day we released ESXi as such, right? So it has tons of features, and mainly why we would say it as like a major release is because of the new capability or a new feature which we have added into there. And the whole redesign was literally based to run Kubernetes or containers as first-class citizens within vSphere. So which would mean that you can run VMs and Kubernetes or the containers side to side as a first-class citizen within vSphere. So that's a major change. Then the whole redesign was all around this. So I will get into more details into that. But then apart from that, apart from vSphere with Kubernetes, I would take like 5 points as the major enhancements or new features within vSphere 7. So first thing, I will definitely take it as vSphere Lifecycle Manager. This is very important for the VMware admins, mainly because the VMware admins are just not about managing the VMs or anything, but then maintaining the lifecycle of the vSphere infrastructure, right? So there had been a lot of I could say it has not been that very easy of thing because there were multiple tools to be used, multiple consoles to be used, but then that's where we have tried to make it simple for vSphere admins to make the lifecycle a completely easily manageable thing. So we will talk about that. So the next thing what I would touch on is the DRS, distributed resource scheduling, right? So this was initially released in 2006, but then we have made with the advent of the change of the application platform and the workload, the kind of workload you get into, right? Currently we had to change the way DRS works. So I will touch on that. Then the next thing what I see important in the current scenario is assignable hardware. vSphere or the VMs to be able to use the different types of hardware which comes in the PCIe hardware, and then all of those things, right? The accelerator hardware, VG accelerator, all of those things, how you can use that more efficiently within vSphere. That is again a key feature I consider. And then just like along with DRS, vMotion has always been, it was a magic when we first announced in 2003, right? So then as of now, we treat it as a feature within vSphere. Nobody is amused about that because it's there, right? But then we have changed a lot. We had re-enhanced vMotion to be capable of being better performing as well as to handle really big workloads. We will go into details onto that. And then last but not the least, I would say intrinsic security. This is really important in the current world. So we have built in quite a lot of security features into the product, and then also got a lot of interaction. So a lot of what do you say, interoperability with the security products and the features available. So I will take intrinsic security also as similar to vSphere with Kubernetes in the overall framework. So this is the where I will be touching in on details into that. So let's go in with the first vSphere with Kubernetes, right? So DevOps. So DevOps is the keyword now with every organization, right? So now when it comes to DevOps admin and the VI admin or vSphere admin, we call, so they are literally diametrically opposite sets of requirement they have. Like typically requests from each of them has to go to a help desk or a central team, and then that's from where each of those requirements are met from the other team, right? So now with vSphere with vSphere 7 with Kubernetes, what we can do is like vSphere admin can create an environment or a namespace for the DevOps, and then they can use their own tools, vSphere admin's tools, to address the requirements from the DevOps team. Same thing goes for the DevOps team also. Their requirements, they can use their own tools, kubectl tools, rather than going into vSphere admin's page and vCenter admin and then all going into that, right? So that's where it became really important. So in short, what it does is vSphere with Kubernetes bridges the gap that today only bridged with the help of a help desk ticket. So it allows for DevOps itself service to, while ensuring quality of service, security, and availability that vSphere admin is charged with providing. So this is what vSphere with 7 with Kubernetes is into, right? So now we talked about this feature, right? So Kubernetes became, or containers became first class citizen within the VMware. So how is this available now? So currently vSphere 7 or vSphere 7 with Kubernetes is not available with all the versions of vSphere, because there are specific stringent requirements as such is needed for running this, right? So we are currently making it available with our VMware Cloud Foundation platform, which is a complete stack of VMware SDDC environment, software defined data center environment, which includes the vSphere platform, the NSX platform, and network virtualization platform, and the storage platform. Why we are putting in a it's not, I won't say it as a restriction, but then why we are doing that is because we would be able to control those requirements, the prerequisites or controls or requirements which is needed for vSphere with Kubernetes. So for if you need to have vSphere 7 with Kubernetes, you need to be leveraging a VCF or VMware Cloud Foundation. This is the requirement as of now. This will change probably in the future as and when we make improvements with vSphere 7 with Kubernetes. So just for you to be aware, as we go further more into this, VMware Cloud Foundation, this is where you will get vSphere 7 with Kubernetes as of now. So as we see here, right? So vSphere with Kubernetes empowers IT operators as well as the developers, and then makes their life easier without even needing to learn a different technology. vSphere administrator would use his own tools like vSphere client itself to work on the whole environment. But at the same time, developer will use his kubectl and his tools only to interact with each other and take the requirements. So the three, I will consider this into three innovations, right? vSphere 7 with Kubernetes. First is definitely uniting vSphere and Kubernetes. Having a container runtime engine on vSphere is very important. Like that is what we have built in with this. So you run VMs as well as containers in the same hypervisor layer. This is really important, and it's a major change what we have done. And the second thing is what we have seen, the second innovation is the app focused management. So as we go through, we find that like the focus is more on applications. Nobody is bothered about what infrastructure you have, what is the backend infrastructure you have. You're just worried about running the application. So this is all about app focused management, running these microservices, container world, cloud native apps, all of those things. So that is where vSphere with Kubernetes will be important as well. And then definitely the other major important thing, DevOps and the IT operated uh, the kind of the way they interact or work together, that becomes collaboration becomes really easy with this, right? So now little more details. I won't go a lot of technical into this, but then what I would say is like for the vSphere administrators, each namespace has its own resource pool. That's where vSphere admin will allocate resources to that resource pool, right? So and then they within that resource pool they will be able to work. So the a developer need not be knowing anything else other than they just work on namespace within their namespace, and their resources, all of those things are allocated by the vSphere admin, and vSphere admin bounds that resources within that namespace. It is all under his control. So these are all good, right? So now it is just not about running the containers on vSphere. There are quite the bigger picture is that uh, all the capabilities, features needed, security, authentication, management, the certificate management, all of those things needed special tools in the container world. Those were different applications or tools which are needed to manage all of those things. But if you look at the vSphere platform, each of these are managed centrally at the vCenter level by on the VMs. VMs can be controlled with all of those things, right? So and when containers become first-class citizen within the vSphere, all of those controllables, all of those capabilities being applied to the containers as well. That's where it becomes very powerful. Having containers on vSphere, you don't need to have anything else other than vCenter to manage all of those things. You can apply the authentication or the authorization from the vCenter directly to the developers for running containers. You can integrate the the NSX security platform into each of those containers, even containers and namespaces as well. Segregate between management and workload, certificate management, all of those things we can do from vCenter. So it is just not about running containers, that is just a part of it, but then the rest all things, overall part of how it becomes an easy way to manage the controllers, containers, and all of those things are the best thing, right? So that is where we get into using all of those things. So that's with vSphere with Kubernetes. I know I can keep talking on this, but then yeah, looking at the content agenda what we have, I will just move on to this. So now that was the main feature. Now we look at the feature enhancements and the new capabilities in the vSphere platform. So as I mentioned, vSphere lifecycle management has always been a big concern or big pain point for the VMware administrators because of the complexity involved. So now with the new vSphere lifecycle management within vSphere 7, what we have focused on three areas. One is the vCenter profiles, segregating or creating a profile which can be used for all the vCenters, and then the main thing, the vSphere lifecycle manager, or we call VLCM, and then the update planner. Of course, upgrading or updating vCenter and vSphere has always been a huge project, because it is not just about applying the update, but then looking at the compatibility, whether other products are interoperable with the vCenter, vSphere, and also that was a big project itself. So we have made your life easier with this. Let's see how it is, right? So vCenter profiles, in an environment you have multiple vCenters. There was no option of having a standard configuration or standard set of configuration which can be applied to multiple vCenters. So this is where we are doing it now. So with vCenter profiles, now we have 4 REST APIs which can list, export, validate, and import. These profiles can be consumed by third-party automation tools like Puppet, Chef, and Ansible. So good thing is that every time this is being applied, any changes made in the vCenter change profile will become identified, and then it can even remediate or go back to the baseline image. This makes it really simple or make it really making it compliance, and also making the life easier for the vSphere admins. Now, the next thing is the lifecycle manager. So lifecycle manager is nothing but an updated or new generation of vSphere update manager, or VUM we used to call it, right? So the VUM was I would say, old generation one, where you could update the VMware tools, ESXi versions and updates and all of those things. Now, with those things in hand, even the firmware updates, all the OEM updates, the vSphere admins needed to do it separately as a separate updates, right? So now that's where we have brought all of these things together into one single family or one single page called vSphere Lifecycle Manager. So now LCM is the next generation, literally the next generation replacement to the vSphere Update Manager, and it is built off a declarative model wherein you can create a cluster image, not just the ESXi image, but then a cluster image wherein ESXi build, your specific build you can create, and then the firmware and add drivers from any vendors you have, right? You can add to that OEM drivers, you can specifically add to that, and also create the vendor add-ons. So currently we have modular framework support for vendor firmware plugins like Dell and HP. So this can connect to the vendor central management tool, either to the website or their management tool, and then bring down any updates on those firmware or firmware plugins, and then add that into this cluster image. So this cluster image is what you will use for updating the ESXi, vCenter, all of those things in your environment. So the one thing is that it can monitor the compliance drift as well. So if any of the ESXi or the component drifts from the cluster image, it can go back and remediate back or bring it back down to the compliant image, right? So this makes it really simple for making a platform standard, and keeping the platform stable has always been a key cable of having a stable environment, right? So that's the lifecycle manager. Now, clear, almost similar to that, the most important thing is the vSender server update planner. So when you start updating vSender, there are quite a lot of components which gets integrated with that. Backup manager, you have the antivirus tools. A lot of components or plugins are being used in the vSender. So now each time the vSphere admin has to go through each of those things, look at the compatibility, and then also look at any known issues if there are for upgrading and all. So that's what we have made it a little more easier for the vSphere admins, wherein if you see this page, you will see the vSender update planner. It will list you all the updates which are available, and then you can select whichever update you want to go to, and then you have an option to select the pre-update checks and interoperable. So once you select the pre-update checks, what it does, it goes in, checks the environment, checks the vSender, and then simulates the upgrade steps, and then give you a report of what is missing or what passed, or if there are any warnings or errors on that. You can even take this report offline and then use it for working on further on that, right? So this is very important. It can even look at it will look at your baseline image, it will look at your hardware available, the vSenders, all of those things, and then go through and then give you a report out of it. Makes the lives of vSender admins or vSphere admins simpler. Now, the next thing was the interoperability. This had been a biggest challenge. So every product in your environment, you have to go in and check the interoperability with the vSender. So this will automatically detect all the products which had been integrated with the vSender, and then it can list you the compatibility. If it is not compatible, if the listed one is not compatible, it will tell you what is the compatible version so that you can plan for going into that. So this makes the life of vSphere administrator easier by making the lifecycle management very simple. I won't say simple, but make it life easier. You will have to do all of those activities, but still it makes it very simpler. And then the downtime what you take for updates is always there. It can be used for mainly for updates itself, rather than going through or fixing an issue which comes in for unforeseen issue which comes in there. Okay, so that is Lifecycle Manager. Now, going a little bit on that, upgrade and migration. So this is also an important thing which we have changed in vSphere 7, right? So earlier we used to have mainly two components, the vCenter and then a platform services controller or an external PSC. That was a mandatory role, external platform service controller, to have an enhanced link mode and all. So most of the complex environment or the big environments have an external PSC which are automatically load balanced with a load balancer and all. So that increased the number of moving components within the vSphere platform itself, right? vCenter platform. So that's where we have changed into a new model wherein the PSCs are brought in. You will just have one single appliance, only one appliance for vCenter, which makes it really easy to manage, backup, take the availability, improve the availability, all of this. You just need to worry about just one single appliance. And one more thing you need to be aware, there are no more Windows-based vCenter supported. So just because the appliances are going forward, this is a hardened appliance with all of those features, capabilities built into that. So makes it all simple, high availability, making it all simple to manage. So that's where you will have one single appliance, vCenter server appliance. Once you move into 7, it is just one appliance. And it also has the capability of migrating your external PSC into an internal or embedded PSC into vCenter once you move into 7. This is really seamless. Earlier, we used to have a tool, two external tool, which you can use to migrate an external PSC into an embedded. Now, all of those things are built into vSphere 7 now. So you can go ahead with that, right? So looking further into the enhancements on vSphere 7, of course, as with every release, we have expanded or improved the scalability of the product itself with more hosts, more VMs and all. But then the most important thing I will see with this is the latency. The latency, minimum latency, which was needed for between the vCenters used to be 100. We have improved that to 150 millisecond. And if you look at the number of hosts and powered on VM supported in a link mode, it's almost like 3 times more. So it has been like we have enhanced the whole thing in a very big way. Now, looking into those who have been using content library, one of the key things what we have seen earlier was those who have started using content library, seeing it's very difficult to maintain the versioning of the template. When there is an update done, it was difficult to maintain those versions. So now that has changed. Now it is so easy. We can set in versioning. There is a tab for versioning itself, wherein it tells you what are the versions which had been applied, the changed versions, and also you can put in the notes why those versions were there, and also the owner of the change at all which had been done, right? So this is what I have from the vCenter side. Now let's go in or go into the next step, right? The intrinsic security, which I told is really important for a lot of corporates now because of the current environment, current scenario, right? So looking at the intrinsic security, the main thing, first thing what comes up is the improved certificate management. If you are a vSphere admin who had managed in 6.x, you would see that like it has been really complicated because vSphere 7, 6.7 and earlier had a lot of certificate to manage, and which became an issue for customers who manage them outside of the VMware certificate authority in vCenter, right? If it was inbuilt or we are using the self-signed certificate, it was not a big problem because vSphere used to manage that. But then if you are using an external your own signed certificate, it used to be a lot of steps involved in managing all of those certificates. So what we have changed is in vSphere 7 does away with most of that complexity. So now vCenter server has much simple approach now, managing solutions completely differently now. So ESXi also has been simplified. So you will have just one certificate which need to be there, and then from where you can actually manage. Makes it simpler for your life of the vSphere admin, much simpler. Now, the next thing with security, I would say, is the identity federation, right? So authentication, authorization, and authentication. So vCenter has always been able to integrate with Active Directory, LDAP, and also our own identity management called single sign-on solution. Now, it was all good, right? So you can improve your security by making the password complex or using the solutions like multi-factor authentications. So now when it comes to multi-factor authentication, there are a lot of options available in the market, and the customer would like to use their own way of managing that. So, and it became a difficulty in the way that for VMware to support all of them became almost impossible. So we came out with another solution. Solution for this is a federation using an open authentication and authorization standard like OAuth2 and OIDC. So which means any platform, any multi-factor authentication platforms which are relying on these open standards, you will be able to integrate it with that. So ADFS, of course, is initially supported in this. Now, what happens is when a user logs in, the net result will be like basically if you log in just like Twitter or Google, what you log in into the web, right? So a user will be identified themselves into vSphere. It will be redirected based on what you enter, and corporate LDAP and will prompt you for the credentials, and then it will take you directly to the vSphere. So this makes the identity or making it more secure and simpler for managing. So we don't need to really working with each and every multi-factor or MFA vendors, but then the customers can use their own MFA and then make it secure and make it simpler for them. Okay. Now, looking a little more into the security part, the vSphere Trust Authority. This has not been used by many people. We came up with this trust something called attestation and vSphere 6.7. What it does is like the hosts, the ESXi hosts that have a trusted platform module or TPM, which was released in 6.7 and have a secure boot enabled, can record metrics about the boot process and configuration, and it will compare while booting the metrics with the vSender, which is stored in the vSender server. And then if it doesn't match, it is not attested. So so that will make it more secure in the way that there are no processors or no vulnerable or no any third-party process which is being injected into ESXi, making it a little more secure in the sense. So this process was called attestation. The vSender looking at the host booting and the metrics and then comparing it with that. Now the problem with attestation in 6.7 was.
There's a quick question, and the question is, do you also support radios for authentication?
Hello?
So the question is, do you also support radios for authentication?
Yes, we do. I will get into details of that once I have more details on the things. Once we move through this, I will get to that.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I'll get to that in the later thing. Okay, so the trust module, as I've mentioned. So the problem here was the attestation is there is not much happens when the host is in an untrusted state. You cannot control that from booting up. So that will come up, and then it just shows an alarm, right? And also, where is this attestation done? It is done by the vSender server, which is again a virtual machine which sits on an ESXi host, right? So the control was really very little. So we cannot really encrypt the things which is running on a vCenter itself. So that's where we moved into the new platform in vSphere 7, wherein what we call vSphere Trust Authority. So it is a foundational technology and opens the doors for making trust a lot more easier by creating a separate stack, right? So we create a separate cluster of ESXi hosts, 2 or 3 ESXi hosts, where that stores that will be storing all the communications or key managers, and then it will be monitoring the host when it comes up. So the good thing is there in that you can these trusted hosts will monitor the host when it boots, and then if it is not certified or not attested, it would not allow any encrypted VMs to run on those hosts. That is what the whole intention is, right? So that makes it more secure as well. And for these trusted hosts, you can use a separate VMware, separate vSender to manage with the key manager and all of those things. I know it is a separate additional overhead, but then if you look at the security of aspect of that, it becomes very important. So this will make sure that encrypted VMs will not run on an unattested host. It makes it important. So for this to work, definitely TPM 2.0 is critically important. Okay, so little more security into that, secure enclaves, right? So now you might have heard about the Intel security vulnerability, which is all up to based on a security vulnerability on the hardware itself, right? So we have come up with something called security enclave, which is supporting Intel softguard guard extensions, right? So what it does is if you have encrypted keys or secure keys within a VM, but then shares it when it accesses the hardware. It actually shares those keys along with multiple layers. This is how the virtualization layer works, right? So within the VM, guest OS, hypervisor, and then down into the CPU. So now with this methodology, what it does is it allows an application to conspire with the CPU to keep the secrets from the guest OS and hypervisor, and thereby eliminating them from the risk equation. So it will be directly talking to the CPU itself and sharing those secrets with the CPU itself. So this is the new thing which is coming currently, and this is available only on Intel. Now, a side effect to that, or I would say a trade back to that, is that there are few restrictions involved in this. You need to have specific CPU, Intel CPU with SGX support. That is definitely required. And then the latest hardware on the VM, latest VM hardware 17 is needed. And also you will not be able to use the features like vMotion, fault tolerance, suspending a VM. So those kind of features won't be available because this is all tied into a host, and then that's where this thing works on, right? So that is VSGX and secure enclaves. Now, switching gear into the next portion, right? The application acceleration. So this could be very useful in the when you are attaching the different kind of hardware. So assignable hardware is a framework developed to extend the support of vSphere features when customers use the hardware accelerators like PCIe, firmware devices, and all of those things, right? So it introduces the DRS and vSphere HA supports for VMs equipped with a pass-through PCI device or a NVIDIA GPU. So these are the things which comes up in the assignable hardware. This is again new thing which comes up in the 7th track. So with this, the new dynamic direct path IO and the NVIDIA GPU are both using this assignable hardware framework. So it is a new way of configuring pass-through to expose PCI devices directly to the VM. No longer is the hardware address of the PCI directly mapped to the or the VMX file within the VM. It is directly attached to the VM so that first of all the performance improves and then makes it secure as well. So this is one of the things which comes in with GPU virtualization or attaching GPU directly to a VM. Right. So going into some basic things, basic features, but then having where a lot of changes had been made, right? The DRS. So if you see, DRS was released in 2006. What was the whole intention? Having a cluster, the load within a cluster is all balanced across the ESXi host. That was the whole intention of having DRS in there. So, but then since the time we have released DRS, there had been tremendous changes in the workload scenarios as well as the data center architecture and all of those things. So now it's no more. We don't. The focus is no more on having the load spread across a cluster. It is all about focused on workload, focused on having a VM work well, right? That is it. You don't care about like spreading the load across a cluster. It is not at all a criteria. So that's where we had to go back and then made some changes. We had made a really major change within the DRS on how it works. So as I mentioned, like the older DRS was based on balancing the load across the cluster, and it was cluster centric. Made sure that like all the hosts are having even almost equal utilization across the cluster. And this check was run every 5 minutes, right? And now with the new improved DRS, as I mentioned, we are no more looking at the cluster. We are looking at the VM happiness. We would say VM happiness just because it is all the whole intention is to make sure that the VM runs well. And we should be aware it is not directly linked to the health of the VM, but about the readiness of the VM to run the workload. That's where it works. And it is based on a VMDRS score, which is calculated based on specific metrics, which I will show in the next slide. But then it is based on the highest VM DRS score, wherein the cluster will keep the VM on that specific host. That's how it works. And the most important thing is it runs in every 1 minute. So it is more granular, more simple, or more accurate to work on. So little more details into that VMDRS because that's important. So as I mentioned, it is not. This is not a health score. It is basically the considering or measuring the execution efficiency of a virtual machine. So the performance of the VM is basically looked at through different things. CPU ready time. Even if the CPU usage is less, you will get to see that performance is degrading just because the CPU ready time is very high, because it has to wait for the CPU to do his scheduling work, right? So that is something which um, CPU ready time is looked at. So that's what we will look at that. Then the memory swap. When there is a memory swap, we know that there is the demand is high and then the availability is less. So that's one thing which we look at. So looking at these metrics, it will look at the VM DRS score, and then if it has a higher DRS score on another host, what it does is it would look at the overhead on moving that VM. So that is what we call migration cost or migration overhead. So that also will be added, and accordingly it will calculate whether this VM should be moved to the other or not. So that's where it makes it a little simpler or more workload centric, making the improved DRS in there. So if you have vSphere 7, you will get to see this change in DRS working straight away. Okay, so that's on the DRS. If we talk about DRS, definitely vMotion is the next thing what we need to look at, right? So vMotion, which came in like was a magic initially, but then now it's like used by every hypervisor. That's a key feature, or that's a basic feature what we want in any virtualization platform now, right? So one of the things with vMotion was when the initial workloads like we call non-monster VMs or the standard VMs up to 8 vCPUs are really simple. It doesn't make any impacts to the moving at all. But then what we found is like the huge monster VMs or the heavy workload like SAP HANA, Oracle RAC and all. When we do the vMotion, there is an overhead or there is an impact on the performance. Also, it causes a bit of delay in moving, and then it causes the freezing of the VM while vMotion. So most of these vendors used to say that it is not recommended to enable vMotion or do a vMotion with this, just to avoid any performance impact onto the applications, right? So that's where we have looked at improving that and enhancing how this can be improved. And we have done major changes with that, and we have done really big difference with the vMotions or making the vMotion improved, right? So let's look at that. Before we to get to that, we just need to, I'll just tell you what is the basics of how the vMotion works. That's only when it becomes very easy for you to understand, right? So when a vMotion is initiated, what happens is it creates a clone of the VM at the destination. That's how it starts off with. Then it starts copying the memory. It copies the memory as and when it changes, it copies it there. At one point of time, it will suspend the VM on the source. And then at this point of time, the VM is suspended, and then it transfers the device state into that. The last bits of changes what had been done on that. This period is called the stun period. That's where, and then it is resumed on the destination. So the steps 3 to 5 is what we call the stun period, when the VM is suspended and then resumed on the other host. So this we intend to do, the target is to do within a time of 1 second. That's how this is how the vMotion basically works, and this is ideally how it works, right? Now, if you look at the copying of that last bits of data, right? So how do we do that? When we are created a copy of the clone of the VM on the other side, destination side, we install something called a page tracer on all the vCPUs, and then that tracer copies all the changes what is happening on the memory across the other CPU, right? So and then that's where it copies all of those data back into the destination host. So now what happens is installing this parser on all the vCPUs, what we found have an overhead on the performance, or it creates a performance degradation. So that's where it is actually creating the performance degradation on these VMs. So that is one of the things which we wanted to reduce. And with vSphere 7, what we did is this parser, we will deploy the parser only on one vCPU, just on one vCPU. and then that vCPU will take care of all the changes on the memory, and then that will pull up all the memory changes from the thing, and then so which means all the other vCPU will be available again for the application. So it will not impact anything on that. Okay, so this reduces the performance impact. Now, looking at the execution switchover process, right? Now, if you look at the bigger VM, huge VMs, right? Huge VMs where you have, for example, 1 GB of memory. So the changes will be literally about like 32 kilobytes of bitmap, which is very easy to transfer in 1 second. But then when it comes to 24 TB of memory, it is the size of the bitmaps will be about like 768 MB, which is literally not possible to be copied over 1 second. So that's where what we had made a change in that. We this whole bitmap change of the memory bitmap, we don't want to do the whole of this. What we have compressed that and then found that most of these bitmaps we have already copied onto the other side. So what we will look at is we will look at the changes only in the bitmap, and then transmit only those changed bitmaps onto the other side. In simple words, you don't need to worry about all of those things. What I'm trying to say is that what it used to take 2 seconds has considerably reduced to 175 milliseconds. So that's where the vMotion improvement or the speed improvement also has changed. So which means that stun time, the VM stun time has been completely reduced from 2 seconds to 175 milliseconds. I'm talking this about really like huge VMs. The small time VMs will not even feel, because that's all like even at this time it will do at very shorter times, right? But then when it comes into huge VMs like SAP HANA, Oracle workloads and all, this becomes a huge improvement, right? So in short, what has been changed in vMotion is basically like the performance enhancement. There are no more performance degradations seen even in the monster VMs during the vMotion. And then also the stun time has been considerably reduced. So you will see huge reduction in the time taken to move a huge VM. So we have tested this with Oracle workloads, SAP HANA VM. There are documents available publicly wherein the comparison or the test study or test validation of these huge workloads are done with vSphere 7 vMotion. I would definitely recommend to have a look at that and see the difference. It's major difference what we have seen in there. So looking into the Bitfusion, next one, what I talk about is Bitfusion. So it's a new integrated feature within VMware vSphere 7, right? So wherein it will enable helps to enable enterprises to efficiently abstract, pool, and automate the delivery of GPU resources on demand for AI and ML applications. So this came in as part of our acquisition of a company called Bitfusion during last year at a pioneer for wherein we were actually doing a pioneer in the virtualization of hardware accelerated resources, including GPU technology. So this was the Bitfusion wherein we changed in. So the issue what we see with the Bitfusion currently without virtualization is right. Organizations use these hardware accelerators such as GPUs to dramatically improve the performance of artificial intelligence or machine learning workloads. But then what they see is, what the IT team see is that these hardware accelerators are really like isolated islands, and then some of them are heavily used, some of them are not at all used, and there is no way of pooling this across and then showing it up as a utilizing this unused resources and all, right? So that's where vSphere 7 with Bitfusion will help us with. This combination will help any customers to achieve really cost savings, enables resources sharing out of the box, and deliver the right hardware acceleration. Now, these AI and ML applications rely completely on hardware acceleration, like literally to tackle the large and complex computation. So with this new capability, you will be able to pool those resources into one single, just like what we do for the compute pooling and abstraction, we do this for the GPUs as well. And then the Bitfusion will be able to share these GPUs across the network, across different workloads or across different use cases. So Yeah, so that's how the Bitfusion is going to be. This is currently in tech preview. You will soon hear announcements on release of this coming up, and that's going to be part of vSphere 7. Now, I have talked quite a lot about these features and capabilities. I know it has been like so much of information coming in this short time. So I just want to summarize on like why top 10 reasons to upgrade to vSphere 7. For me, the main thing is like it gives you the capability to run modern apps, containers, Kubernetes. You don't need to have a separate team, or you don't need to have a separate infrastructure to run this. You have vSphere 7, run those on that, right? And also the flexibility to run any app on any cloud. That's how it is. It is definitely going to be very, very helpful on that. And then plus the other features, capabilities, we had been doing the enhancements, improvements on the performance. All of those things had been done. Expandability, scalability, all of those things had been done. And then the next thing what I would see is like the focus on security. Intrinsic security. So we had been building or keeping up so much of embedding the security into the vSphere platform, which is the ask of the time, right? So, and then next is the application, focus on the application. So I would this is what I would say, like the top 10 reasons why you should upgrade to vSphere 7. And the other thing, the vSphere 6.0 is end of general support. That's over in March, and now the next, definitely it's available for technical guidance, but then there is no support for the production support contracts available now. So I would suggest everyone, all customers, to have a look at this, look at the vSphere upgrade center, upgrade service, and also details. And I would suggest to go to this portal, vSpherecentral.vmware.com, which is a central location wherein you can have all the document, all the details related to this on vSphere 7, as well as all the features whatever I've talked about. More details, there are videos in there, feature walkthroughs, all of those things are there. This is a great resource wherein you can go in and look at what you want to learn on vSphere 7, right? So summarizing, this has been the biggest innovation for us, right? Since the release of ESXi, this has been the biggest innovation. We have completely redesigned the ESXi to make sure that all kind of workload, be it containers, be it VMs, all run hand in hand, all run in one single platform, simple monitoring, single page of single pane of manageability, and then any developers and vSphere admin, anyone can use. So that is where vSphere 7 is really important thing. So vSphere 7 with Kubernetes is definitely the key or the innovative thing behind this. And just to make sure, like to be very clear, vSphere 7 with Kubernetes is currently available along with VMware Cloud Foundation because of the prerequisite needed for running that. You can wait for like probably in the releases, upcoming releases, you will get to see it as available in other general platforms also. But then as of now, vSphere 7 with Kubernetes is available through VMware Cloud Foundation. One thing before I wind up, if you want to try vSphere 7 with Kubernetes, anyone can go and log into labs.hol.vmware.com. This is a hands-on lab portal available from VMware. Anyone can log in. You just need to create an account, and then you can try any VMware product, and then these are like 90 minutes lab available. You can do hands-on labs onto that. You can work on that. You can get to learn that. So for vSphere 7 with Kubernetes, you can specifically look for this specific lab, HOL 2013-01, or the lab number 6877. I will share this in the chat, so you can definitely go in and look at this, and then give us feedback. Give us feedback on what you feel on this, and then spread the message. Thank you. That's all from my side. And one question which was coming in between the Radius, right? Support for Radius. As far as I know, the Radius support is not there on vSphere. The last thing what I heard was like we are not even not been looking at that. So definitely I will get you more details on this. I'll get the details and then can help you with that as well. Any other questions?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It was a very good overview. I found it especially valuable for the vMotion. That's great news. There was a question about whether I don't know whether it's you're the right person to ask, but there was a question about whether there are any issues with the vSphere with the XenApp and XenDesktop environment, and I basically said that you know, there's a supported list of supported hypervisors, and it does not necessarily mean, I guess, that you know, it will not work. In most of the cases, at least in my experience, it always works, but it's just not supported. And if it's not supported, then you need to wait until it's supported. Would you agree?
So running XenApp or XenDesktop platform on vSphere is definitely supported, right? So I have many customers.
The version 7.
Yeah, that is just a matter of, I think, like compatibility. So vSphere 7 just got released, right? So it's just a matter of like the getting into the compatibility list. It is that definitely is the only thing. I don't see it as a problem. That is basically should be in the compatible checks within the vendors. That's all. So normally how the compatibility comes up is the vendors come up and then the vendors test based on our criteria, and then that's when we it says that now XenApp or XenApp later versions had to be tested on vSphere 7, and then that comes up into the compatibility list. So you can always look at the VMware compatibility list as well as from the Citrix compatibility list side, and then I don't see a issue in going back from compatibility within those versions. I think it is just because it is the very latest, was released very recently, and it's just a time of certification or validity checks.
Yeah. Good. There's another question. I'm not sure whether it's Graphic. Can you please post the full question, because I only see it's a kind of half a question. First, you ask licenses, and then you ask possible to have this vSphere 7. Many thanks. Graphic, if you can please type a full question, then Varghese can see the question and then he'll answer you, or Sebastian.
Yeah, I'll check the chat. Yeah, okay, licenses.
Yeah, I guess we need to wait until there will be a full question.
Okay, okay.
Kavik, you can write a full question. Sebastian and Varghese will be able to see this question and answer you outside of this. So they are assign those questions, and if you will write another one, I'll assign another one to the to those guys. All right. Well, on this note, thank you very much. And will the slides be available? I get asked in another private chat. Will the slides be available?
Yeah, I can share a publicly available slide which will have most of these details. Yeah, sure. I will send it to you. I can send it to you so that you can share it with the team. It's a publicly available version.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Thank you. And in